Hi, it's me, Lil. Today I'll be kicking off a new segment that I'm calling In the Limelight with Lil. Well, I'll spend some time with some of today's most fascinating and flyest artists working in America. Today I'm talking to Mexican and Cuban American poet, playwright, spoken artist, and performer Paul S. Flores. Paul is based in the Bay Area, and his work addresses issues of immigration, identity, violence, and healing Latino and immigrant communities. He's a Creative Capital grantee, a Doris Duke artist, and the winner of the Penn Oakland Josephine Miles Literary Award for his novel Along the Borderlines. Let's step into the limelight with Paul S. Flores.
Hey, Paul, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm just in the middle of our winter here in the Bay Area.
Which is nothing like our winter. That's for you guys, it's like 40, 50. We're dealing with like sub-zero temperatures here on the East Coast.
I know. And like the thing with our weather, it's like we're in a bubble, We complain if it gets to be below 50 and oh no, at 48, we're freezing, and everybody's like, shut up. But it's true. We're not used to it, We're used to like very moderate weather, and that's one of the main things that, keeps me in California is,
Yeah.
I can be out almost any day of the year. But
Yeah, that's
you know,
true.
how
That's
are
how
you
my friend
doing?
in Oakland is. Like, he takes walks around the lake every day, pretty much.
The lake is beautiful. The lake, I used to live by Lake Merritt, and that's one of the coolest spots in Oakland. A lot of social activity happens there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I did a loop with him, or a couple loops when I was out there, and there was like a lady selling vegan food products, a guy doing like acrobatics. Like, there's just so much. It's so alive there.
I know we do a lot with a little bit of space. How about that?
Yeah, it's great.
It's true.
Well, I wanted to dive in and give people a chance to get to know you and your work a little better. I was thinking earlier that I think I've known you about 10 years. Does that sound right?
Yeah, since 2015, 16.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But it wasn't until, like, just recently that I realized what your full name is or what the S stands for. I was, like,
Yes.
looking at a list, and I was like, "Oh my god, they got the wrong Puff Flores. What? They made a mistake." And I did, like, some checking, and I was like, "Oh, that actually is his name." So can you tell us, like, a little bit more about the background of all your names, I guess?
Yeah. Well, my full name is Paul Stoisalovich Flores. Um, the S that I use for Paul S. Flores um, is, the initial for my father's last name. He is Serbian. My mother is Mexican and Cuban. And I don't necessarily feel like Stoisalovich is an easy name for people to pronounce. And it's just so much easier for me to just use Paul S. Flores, right? And the reason I keep the S also is because my uncle, my mom's brother, his name is Paul and he's Paul Flores, so we need to differentiate somehow.
Right.
Yeah, that's where it comes from. My dad and my mom both met in Gary, Indiana, and my family was working in the steel mills, so we had a lot of people coming from different countries post World War II. So that's how you get a Cuban, Mexican, Serbian, is that folks were coming to
Yeah.
work, after World War II, and that's how I was born.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. I mean, I know a lot of your work focuses on Mexican and Cuban, Latino communities. Do you, and you're really connected to that, but do you also feel any kind of connection to your Serbian side?
Um, no, not like that. I wasn't, if I wasn't raised around my father, so my dad, my mom split up when I was 3, 4 years old, and then my dad moved to Denver, Colorado, when I was like 7 or 8. So we didn't really have a relationship. I wasn't raised around his family at all, or him. My mom and my grandparents raised me. I lived with my grandparents for quite a long time, so uh, I grew up hearing Spanish every day, all
Mhm.
day, and I grew up with a Cuban grandmother who spent more time with me sometimes during the week than my own mother did, and she didn't speak English. So my father's parents didn't speak English either, just FYI. So I've always been around multiple languages, but because I grew up around my mom's family, plus I grew up on the border.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm from California. I'm from Chula Vista originally, which is 3 miles from Mexican border, in Tijuana. So, my culture, my cultural identity is Latino, and there's really nothing I can do about that. I don't have any cultural connectivity to uh, this Yugoslavia or the Serbian culture. I wish I did. I'll be honest with you.
Mhm.
It's a beautiful area. The history is rich.
You've been
I just
before?
no, no,
No.
never. I don't have that kind of like I guess guide or I have inspiration. I'd love to,
Mhm.
but I just haven't shown up there. I've written a lot about kind of the issue of how not having a father is a kind of I don't know. It's a type of psychology for me. It's a type of metaphor. It works in a lot of psychological ways through the work that I create in my plays, in my poetry. The book that I put out last year, We Still Be, which is my first book of poems. The second section of the whole book is a memoir, and there's very early memories of my relationship with my father, and then the effect of not having that relationship as I grow up and become a dad. So it's a big thing. It's a huge thing in my life, but
Yeah.
I deal with what I have and give all my credit to my mother for how much she sacrificed so that I could, succeed the best I could.
Yeah, I know those familiar relationships and what shapes us as children really also
Right.
shapes us as adults.
It's true.
I can't believe so last year was just your first book of poetry, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I put a novel out in 2002. I wrote a novel that was about kind of like, growing up on the border and intersecting with the change in the culture between Mexico, the United States, Tijuana, San Diego, the militarization of the border, narco culture, things like that, that really shifted in the early 90s. I wrote about that. And then I went 20 years without publishing another book because I went straight into theater. Um, I left the literary publishing world pretty soon after that book was published. By 2003, I was on HBO and touring with Def Poetry. So I didn't have much time to be writing a ton. I was like, and then I moved into theater. So yeah, I didn't get to write another book. But finally, I put one out last year.
That's amazing. I did want to talk a little bit about your transition from poetry to theater. I mean, I know you kind of just cover both disciplines and you're involved in both worlds. But did you feel like you started out as a poet? Is that what first led you to the arts?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. I started writing at 9 years old.
Mm.
In fact, back to my dad, as my dad moved away, I received letters periodically from him, you know, um, like letting him telling me about his life and what he's thinking about. And I remember actually one of those letters containing clippings from his byline at the Denver Post. So my dad was a journalist, um, and so he would send me, his clippings and put it. I was like, one of the first times I remember seeing a picture of my dad was his picture in the paper. Anyway, uh, I would, write back to him, and he didn't always answer what I wrote to him.
Huh.
Like he would be on have his own agenda, so he didn't
Sure.
he didn't really always engage what I was writing. And so that kind of led me into other types of writing, what I want to say to my dad or what I wish I could tell him, or um, just kind of opened up a lot of, I guess, imaginary and imaginative writing. I think I started writing like I know the first poem I published when I was like 22, I think, was a kind of like frustration with not being able to communicate adequately with my dad, and so that was a poem. But um, I feel like poetry has been what I have documented a lot of my personal life with, you
Mhm.
know. Um, so it's always served that way as a kind of way to like I still write my poems longhand.
Oh, good.
Like I I uh I have a journal, and so I journal anything about my life, and oftentimes whatever content that I've put down in the journal can be transformed into a poem if it's emotionally charging enough, or if the story's really lingering. So yeah, the writing act of actually taking a pen to paper, which I developed when I was very young, like that's still with me, even though my handwriting is horrible. It's just scrawl, but I
As long as you can read it, that's fine.
it, sometimes I can't honestly, but it's a struggle sometimes. But yeah, so I'm a poet first, and I think it's a very personal, emotional outlet for me, um, that I've learned through going to school and studying poetry, getting an MFA in writing, where I've learned to be a technical, proficient writer. Where I'm thinking about craft and whatnot. But I do believe that the first instinct for me in writing was my emotional response to the world around me.
So then how did you make that transition from poetry to theater?
I think it was gradual, and I would say that it was also about my relationship to community. As a poet, um, in the Bay Area, you need to be expressive. You got to be, how would I say this? You need to be kind of an extrovert. Um,
Mm,
the poetry scene, and I'll call it a scene, even though it's multiple scenes in the Bay Area, is rich. It's long. It's got a legacy attached to it, whether it's the Beat Poets or the Black Panthers, and
okay.
it's just so much art and activism here. And
Yeah.
when I came to San Francisco in 1995, everybody was loud around me. As everybody was just very loud, and I think I had to learn that in order for me to develop an audience, I needed to really speak up,
Yeah.
and that moved me into performing my poems, and working with people like Bamuti, right? So Mark
Mhm.
Bamuti Joseph was one of the early co-founders, like myself, of Youth Speaks, um, along with James Cass, and we were the model of what we wanted to show teenagers what spoken word was. So this is 95, 96, 97, 98. um Spoken word was just really blowing up. I believe Saul Williams had just come on the scene, and hip hop and spoken word were like the thing that we were doing, and it was very performance based. And
Uh-huh.
so I found myself in front of thousands of people, literally, and that kind of, when you're with a bunch of really talented performers, your performance moves up. Um, and I'll probably refer to this later, is about the artistic collaborations that I have had have been very fortunate for me, because I've been able to be with excellent performers who have helped me move up in the arts kind of world, because I've gotten better by being around them. And performing moved me into like stages, and stages moved me into theaters, and the desire to want to like expand my 3-4 minute poems into longer narratives, where I'm telling a story, that I use other things besides just my voice, like props or video or costuming. Um, I was around people who wanted to do that, like Bamuti or Bosia or Camila Forbes.
Mhm.
These were people that I came up with. And we were all like, okay, we've mastered this form of performance poetry, spoken word poetry, slam. What do we really want to do next? And it was about creating these narratives for stage, still in a poetic voice,
Yeah.
still using monologue and not really having a foot on or a grasp of what type of theater we were making. But like around 2000, I'd say 2002, between 2000 and 2003 is when I was really developing what would become my theater aesthetic, which is very multidisciplinary,
Mhm.
interdisciplinary,
Yeah.
music, dance, um, and poetry, song, obviously a lot of narrative, but yeah, it came out of spoken word. That's how I would say the early 2000s is when I became a theater artist. The Hip Hop Theater Festival um, put me out on the whole initiative that Roberta Uno started at Ford Foundation called Future
Right.
Aesthetics.
Yeah.
That put me on. That raised a whole generation of artists. I'll just be honest with you.
Yes.
And that
Roberta was one of the leaders of the movement for
yes,
sure.
yeah, it's not crazy. Like we can mark these changes. And I actually love that. It's really beautiful. I'm glad you asked, how that happened, but sorry it was so long-winded.
Oh, no, it's fine, it's fine. I do wanna talk about the multiple hats you wear, but I wanted to ask you first, because 'cause I'm always curious about how artists describe what they do to other people. Like, what do you tell your kids about what you do? They understand what your work is? Is there some kind of tidy elevator pitch,
I think my
that you
kid
have?
my kids see me a little bit different. Like they see dad at home mostly, so
Mhm.
they'll see me the writer, right? So for both for all of my children, mostly my daughter and my oldest son, who have seen me evolve over the years. Um, they see dad at the computer or in his at his desk, and they see me creating things. Um, my oldest son got to really see my development as a theater artist. So, like, they know I'm a writer first. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
my dad's a writer. He has books. He writes things. He writes poems. He writes plays. He writes songs.
Mhm.
They know that. That's what they'll say. And then, when my oldest son Santos was in elementary school, I was I was a single father, so I didn't have childcare for rehearsal time. So he was there with me. He would watch me perform. He would watch me rehearse. He'd see me work with my director with costumes, and I think it did have an impact on him when he was younger because he started doing youth theater. Um,
Mhm.
I remember him writing his first bio when he was like 12 years old, and he's like, he's his biggest inspiration is his dad, who is a actor. He thought I was an actor, right?
Mhm.
Because he what he remembers most was me putting on costumes and
Right.
playing on stage. So I would say, like, he sees me as an actor in a lot of ways. I know he got bored with the poetry, and my daughter Luna sees me as the writer.
Mhm.
Um, I am that and all of that and more. But yeah, that's who they see. And I think that that's fine. They're both my daughter and my son are artists. My daughter's a dancer, and my son's a painter. So they do realize that,
Mhm.
the art forms evolve according to, I mean, you evolve with the art form. Like, and if my son decides to do some pottery or something, and he wants to be, or ceramics, and he wants to change his identity, that's fine too. But yeah, like I do a lot of different performing arts. I would call myself a multidisciplinary artist.
Yeah.
I do invest at times as much in the writing as I do in the music, or in the choreography,
Mhm.
right?
You always have
I
great
think-
collaborators that you work with too, like Rosalba Roland and Giovanni Terry.
right? Yes, I mean those two right there that you mentioned those are outstanding, internationally known artists, who've achieved a level of mastery that I only hope I can one day. I probably won't, but they are, so incredible. Um, and being in that room with them, with Rosalba, with Yosvani, with Ramon, with ladies, and seeing everybody compose it's incredible. Like, Rosalba took one of my monologues, and we were working on We Have Day, which was a play, musical theater piece that we did, with Yosvani and Rosalba directed. She looked at a monologue. She was having a hard time staging it. Like, what should this be? And she just started singing the first two lines. Right. She just started singing them. She's like, "This is a song." And I'm like, "What?" I go, "This is a monologue. This is a song. Listen." And so she sings the first four lines of the monologue, from the song called My Mother Yamaya. Um, and she totally transforms what I had written. Um, and I hear a melody that I did not compose. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
She hands over. She sings the song a couple times. She sings the words I wrote, gives it to Yosvani, and says, "Yosvani, turn this into a song."
That's amazing.
Yosvani goes to the piano. 4 hours later, he's got a song with total
Wow.
notation, musical notes, sheet music, everything. And you're like,
That is wild. I always am curious about how that works. I mean, I guess the process is different for everybody, but
for
that
everybody,
makes a
for
lot of
everybody,
sense. That's so fascinating.
right? Like that was when I realized, yes, there are many ways to create theater. So many.
Mhm.
Um, they're unanticipated. I think that's probably the best thing. That's probably why I stick with theater, honestly, is
Mhm,
because
mhm.
moments like that,
Yeah.
it's a collaborative form. It is so
Mhm.
exciting. It can suck too when everybody's mad at each other. That's not good, because I've been through that too. They can
Yeah,
bog
that
down,
happens. That happens. It does.
but that to me is the core of the kind of artist I want to be, is somebody who's open and sensitive to any kind of like influence that will encourage whatever story I'm trying to tell to be told better. Um, access better, other ways of understanding. Often I write bilingually, so
Yeah.
I don't always, and I don't translate all the time. Sometimes I do, but if I want somebody to understand this story, but it's all in Spanish, or a song that's told in Yoruba, I got to be able to add something like visuals and dance and
Mhm,
songs so that
mhm.
people can understand what the story is. That was the challenge that I had with We Have Day, was trying to translate Cuba, um, to a non-Cuban audience, and having Rosalba was just number one. She was the first director I wanted. She knows how to do musicals.
Mhm.
She knows how to tell stories with music. So when I envisioned that project, I think she was my second call.
Hmm.
My first call was Yosvani, and Yosvani Terry, and then the second person I called was Rosalba, because I knew that I wanted Yosvani to compose, and Rosalba knows how to do musical theater as good as anybody in the United States.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about We Have Ray and the process for developing that and what it's about, everything?
this was this is why I love the Doris Duke Foundation, because uh, let me back up. In 2014, I was touring a very successful play of mine called Placas. We were all over the nation.
Yeah.
We were, I don't know, I think I had already reached like 30 or 40,000 people with this play. And I did not write with that intention. It just happened that I hit a time where the story was effective. And I had some collaborators again who were really impactful. And Rosalba presented Placas for 1 or 2 nights um, at the Traveling Puerto Rican Theater in
Yeah,
Manhattan.
Perdones, yeah.
And she really liked it. She was like, wow, I'm really, that was not a musical piece. That was a very straightforward narrative about Salvadoran culture and immigration. And she was really interested in it. I remember she was surprised how good it was, and had sold out nights. And then after I come back from that tour, which was 3 months long, I got a call from Ben Cameron. And, I knew Ben from TCG. And he's like, Paul, we want to give you the Doris Duke Award. And I'm like, what? Stop it. Why are you joking with me? I don't, quit lying. Who is this? And, he was like, no, for real. Like, we have been following what you've been doing. And I'm like, you have? He's like, because, you don't apply for that. They just kind of hit you up out of the blue.
And you never know who's watching, too.
You don't know. And so my first meeting with the Doris Duke winners of 2015 was, I believe, like in April or something like that. And I went to New York. I left San Francisco and went over to the Duke offices. And sitting around that table was, some people I really love. Like, Mildred and Steven from Universes. Those are people that I admire a lot.
Yeah.
And they were part of my cohort. I believe it was Alonzo King was there. Yeah, I admire him. Amazing. Lines Ballet is huge in San Francisco.
Yeah.
These are people just like, wow, what am I doing here? And then next to me was Yosvani Terry, and that blew my head off. I was like, this is Yosvani Terry. I've been following his music for 15 years, 16 years. This guy's a legend in Cuba. His family is a legendary. I can't believe I'm got the same award he got. Like, what?
Yeah.
I don't belong here. Total imposter syndrome. Went
Right.
nuts. Went through this deep insecurity and then super fanboy. And then I shifted. I was like, I can't lose this opportunity. Yosvani, I got an idea for a show. And I pitched it to him, sitting there at the table, going
that
through
very first day, really?
left orientation.
I thought it was something you guys had developed later on.
No. I pitched him a story of Cuban immigration, but based on artists and what they contribute. And we were sitting right there, and I was like, hey, what do you think about this? And he's like, well, hold on, man, we're supposed to be learning shit here. Let's go have lunch and talk about it. And so the next day we walked around Central Park for about an hour, and I basically kind of gave him a stiff outline of what I thought we could do and who could fund it and how it could work and who I would bring in as collaborators with him. And, Rosalba was a big part of that. And I was like, we're going to bring Rosalba. He's like, okay, good. I know who she is. And that's how We Have Ire started. Like, I just felt like I was at a very fortunate place in my life. In 2015, I had just been off of a successful play. I was next to a guy who I really admired his music. I loved what Yosvani did. Integrating American jazz with Afro-Cuban language, and it's just like I love it. And I couldn't believe that this was in front of me, and I just didn't want to lose the opportunity. And somehow he said yes. I don't know how or why, because he was very difficult to pin down after that. He's in Europe and
Right.
Africa, and I'm not. You
Yeah,
know
but
what
he
I mean?
probably, believed in you as an artist and this project that you wanted to manifest. He thought was a great idea. Otherwise, he wouldn't have worked with you on it, right?
I think so. I mean, he knew me. I knew his younger brother better, Junior. We had collaborated at La Peña Cultural Center when Junior was working with Quetzal, this other band, and Junior was working in Los Angeles a lot. So I talked to Yosvani about that. I'm like, I did this collaboration with your brother that was spoken word and jazz, and it was really awesome because I found a lot of ways to experiment with him. But I want to tell a story with you. Like I want to tell your story, Yosvani. Like, how did you become a teacher at Harvard, man? Like what? Right? Like part of the thing was, how does a black Cuban jazz artist become a professor of jazz at Stanford? I mean at
Yeah.
Harvard.
Right. Yeah.
To me, I was interested in that story. Like and I felt like I wanted to tell that story to him. I wanted to also dig into, what are his what's the inspiration behind the way he writes music? What does it have to do with Africa? What does it have to do with Cuba? What does it have to do with New York?
Mm-hmm.
Um, his story crisscrosses so many things, and he's already super articulate about ethnomusicology and stuff like that. But and he had composed one play, the music for one play before that. But I still didn't know what we were going to get into, and I think from talking with him and telling him that I wanted to write about him, but also about the Cuban immigration, and I wanted to set it to Latin jazz. He's like, well, what else are you going to put in it? Is it just going to be me and you? And I'm like, no, no, no. I think if we're going to have your music, we should have a really tight choreography. So let me talk to this other Afro-Cuban choreographer who is also has an amazing story. Ramon Ramos Alayo in
Mm-hmm.
San Francisco. He
Mm-hmm.
he was not from the same area of Cuba, but he had gone through a similar trajectory as Yosvani. They both were graduates of the National School of Art in Cuba,
Oh.
which was something that the revolution accomplished. The revolution institutionalized art in Cuba,
Mm-hmm.
trained all of these people to be exceptional artists, right? And to me, I thought it was odd. Like, the revolution gave you this education and you live in the United States. It was also like a contradiction in a lot of ways for me, but something that I was interested in, like, do you credit the revolution, the Cuban Revolution, for your
Mm-hmm.
talent, for
Yeah.
your accomplishments? And I remember having this conversation with Yosvani. Yosvani said, hell no, hell no. The revolution had nothing to do with my musical accomplishment. My family's been doing music since before the revolution. So I'm not trying to give credit to Fidel Castro. I remember him saying that.
Mm-hmm.
I would have been a musician with or without the revolution, is what he said. And I said, wow, okay, well, I guess since your dad did start in the 40s, that would make sense. But talking to Ramon was the opposite. Oh, thank God for Fidel Castro. Otherwise, I'd have
Oh,
been
really?
I'd
Oh,
have been
that's
a poor
fascinating.
beggar. Yeah. So
Oh.
this was kind of like what I was learning, and then I brought in Ladies, who was a DJ who, of both of them, she was the one that was like the typical Cuban escapee story. Like she actually got on a little raft
Mm-hmm.
and floated from Cuba to the Key West and put her foot on the dry land and declared herself, I want to be in America. So her story was totally different. She didn't go to the School of National Art. She's a hip hop artist. She grew up, far more, difficult situation, but she was a pioneer in her own self. She was the first Cuban female DJ. Um, so telling her story, she goes from being lost at sea on a raft to playing for President Obama in the White House. So
Wow.
these are just amazing
It's a great
stories.
story.
You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying. So We Heavy Day was about really grasping onto the gift that life can be with, when you work hard at your artistic talent. And you find that your ancestors are blessing you to carry their story forward. Um, and those were the people who I chose to create We Have You Day with. And we were so fortunate to get to do it, but then bam, COVID hit us right in the middle of our tour,
Mhm.
which made it really
Yeah.
hard for us to sustain the project. And we were able to do a couple shows after back in 2023,
Mhm.
but I think COVID really kind of tripped us up and
Yeah.
stalled out that show.
Yeah, that happened for a lot of people, yeah,
Mhm.
unfortunately.
Right? Yeah,
I wanted to ask, this is kind of a two-part question, but they're related, because you do wear, like, several different hats, being, like, a poet and a playwright and obviously a performer too in a lot of ways. Like, is there one that you feel like is the biggest hat or the hat that you lead with when you create? Is it poet? And, like, also when you're and the second question is, like, when you're getting ready to work on something new, like, what is the first step of that? Do you start with, like, an image or a question or a feeling?
That's interesting. Um, I think I introduce myself either as a poet or a
Mhm.
playwright.
Yeah.
It's one or the other. Depends on the context that I'm in. They are separate communities. Just to be clear about that, the literary poetry community is separate from the theater community. They are two different cultures,
Mhm.
um, and they are two different languages. So it is important, when I step into I would say that when I'm in the literary scene, the poetry scene, I have complete confidence. I know
Hmm.
exactly who I am. I have so many things to point to say I belong here. I've earned
Okay.
the title poet. I think with theater, because I come out of poetry, there's a lot of skepticism when I enter into traditional theater.
Mhm.
Theater with a T, with the RE ending.
Exactly.
Mm. I get kind of like less credit,
Yeah.
even though I've accomplished a lot more than many have inside theater. Nevertheless, I still refer to myself as a playwright in those contexts. But when I was coming up and we were pushing hip hop theater, we would get laughed at, right? It was like, that's not theater.
Yeah, it wasn't a thing. Yeah.
That you don't belong in this conversation. You need to go
Mhm.
over with the musicians.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I don't write music. You know what I mean? Like I write words, I write stories. They just happen to rhyme and have a beat on them. Um, and I remember that it was hard for me to call myself a theater maker or a playwright
Mhm,
then.
mhm.
And I think after 2014 that changed. But nevertheless, yeah, I'm definitely a poet and a playwright. I do lead with producer at times too.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
because yeah, I create a lot of shows that maybe are not featuring my performance or my writing,
Mhm.
but they are my vision, and it can be for multiple organizations. It can be for the ones that I work with now. Um, so yes, I am called on to produce shows for the Museum of Modern Art, for the Centro Legal de la Raza. People will ask me to curate for them all the time. Um, so I do have that role in the community too.
Okay, yeah.
And I've also become a researcher. So where I'm actually paid to research issues that then become plays. So yeah, I mean, how about that for an answer?
That's good. That's great.
That's
Um,
crazy. I'm a poet, playwright, producer, researcher.
is you have many,
What was the
many
second part of
hats.
yeah, what was the
I
second
was
part of it?
asking, like, if there's anything in particular that first gives you inspiration when you're trying
Right,
to
yeah.
develop a new piece. Is it a
Yes.
word or a feeling or an image?
So I'm lucky that I get offered commissions. People will ask me, "Can you write a piece about this?" And they'll pay for that. So oftentimes, if a piece comes that way, then often I'm looking at the issue that I'm supposed to be writing about or the person. And so then how do I go to the actual creation of it? Um, this is how I create.
Mhm.
I improvise out loud. Um, So often, if I'm talking about theater particularly, but even writing poetry, I'm very orally based. Like it needs to sound like somebody talking. Um, that's just how I like to hear theater and poetry. I am gonna give credit to people who use stylized voice and stylized
Mhm.
language when they write, but I
Yeah.
don't. Most of my stuff sounds like the way I talk.
That's the kind of
Um,
poetry I prefer,
and
to be
when I was
honest,
writing
because
fiction,
otherwise I have a hard time,
you know what I
accessing it.
mean? That's
Yeah.
what I like. I like to hear somebody's voice, like, "Is this how you sound when you talk? What kind of person would you be in real life? Um, how would you order lunch?" Things like that. Like, it's so usually it's a voice that comes to my head first. What does this thing sound like? What does this person sound like? Someone was asking on Facebook yesterday, "Hey, poets, when you write, do you hear a voice first, or do you have to have music playing in the background? Does music come first?" And this person was like, "'Cause I have to have complete silence, and I don't have a voice in my head, and I'm the opposite. I have voices in my head, right? Like the the way people talk, I want to hear them. One of the biggest challenges that I have right now with this piece I'm writing about this guy named Carlos Aceituno, who is a very famous Afro-Brazilian carnival creator here in San Francisco, is that he passed away 20 years ago. And I
Hmm.
can't find evidence of his voice. It's been very difficult for me to access his character entirely because there isn't recordings of him talking. Um, and so I've interviewed his family members and his friends and his collaborators, and they tell me things that he says, but it's very different. So for me, creating comes from hearing a voice and putting that voice out loud. And often it'll be walking around in my studio or
Mhm.
in my living room or in my shower
No,
and
no,
just
why
talking out
the
loud.
best
And people
ideas
think I'm
always come
crazy, like
during shower
literally.
time for some reason. I was like, "Why is that?"
Right. You know what I mean? I don't know, but honestly, that is where I will go now. And before it was accident, but now I actually go there.
That's good. Excellent. So
I
you're
turn
also
the
a very
water on,
clean
get in the
poet, so that's
water,
good to
and
know.
let it go. Yes, yes, a very,
Exactly.
a very well
Okay, I have, like,
showered poet.
4 more questions, about 4 more questions. Um, let's see. How would you describe your artistic voice now as compared to earlier in your career, and what do you think is softened or sharpened or deepened?
No, that's a really good question. Um, I think a little bit off what I was saying before, my voice has become
Mhm.
um more natural on stage while I'm also doing more on stage. So, you know, as I got older, I left the box, what we call the poetry box, where you stand in front of the mic and just give the poem. Now when I'm delivering, I'm far more physical. My body is moving all over the place,
Mhm.
not necessarily in a choreographed way, but sometimes yes. Like I will integrate small choreographed movements into my performances, whether they're monologues or spoken word. I believe also that one of the techniques I've really tried to cultivate is
Hmm.
direct eye communication with audience members, um, which then leads to reactions, which then leads to my comments. So often, my performances will be turned from my performance into a
Oh, that's
conversation
cool.
with
I
the
love that.
audience
That
member right
doesn't
then
always
and there.
happen in traditional
Um,
theater anyway.
no, it doesn't, but it's happened to me a couple times where I can see that somebody's affected either physically
Yeah.
or emotionally by what I'm saying, and I will ad lib and be just
Mhm.
acknowledge that something's happening right now. And I think like, that comes from me also getting off the stage and actually performing in the crowd. That's something that I've also done a lot more as I have um, evolved, was to get even closer to the audience so that I just get off the stage. And this is what I'm usually talking about when I'm doing solo work, works that I direct, or if I'm in somebody's play. No, I'm not going to be doing that. But in my own performance, I'm working on
Mhm.
what's the best way to connect to my audience. How do I make them feel this moment as different from other moments in their life? Um, how do I break down the wall between performer and audience member? Short of touching them, you know, how do I make them feel something? And sometimes that might be about proximity. It might be me singing in their ear. It might be me smiling right at them while I'm delivering a line, or commenting on, their smile, asking them a question, breaking the piece at that moment. And I feel like that comes from a confidence, but it also comes from a passion that I have to want to. The reason I do this work, it is a form of communication. It's a form of togetherness. It is something far more spiritual and real than putting words on paper. The intention is to take the words off the page and to share them with somebody and hope that it
Mm.
really makes an impact.
Yeah, I feel like I'm sure there's lots of people who have been impacted by your work because it brings a lot of empathy to experiences or a
Mhm.
community that a lot of people don't always connect with, especially like naturally day to day.
Yes,
I want to
that's the
talk
goal.
about. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's the healing part. That's the healing part. I've been trained in a lot of healing techniques, and a lot of that is based on Native American, indigenous, um, Afro Caribbean, you know, just how we survive the trauma that our ancestors endured, how
Mm-hmm.
we survive the current craziness that we go through, how we cope. And, I'm telling often my
Yeah.
stories, they're not always happy. In order for me to illustrate what connects us, sometimes I got to talk about pain, um, because we understand that pain. Um, if I'm talking about immigration, I have poems and stories that lift up what we bring to the United States as immigrants. And I have poems and stories about how we've been uh,
Mm.
isolated, rejected,
Yeah.
hurt, killed, um, forgotten. And, you know, those stories have a gigantic impact on folks. Um, and I don't want to harm them by, by triggering trauma, but I also
Uh-huh.
want to
Uh-huh.
let them know they're not alone in feeling these things. And so that type of proximity, that closeness, the performance itself is meant to try to heal some of that pain, by saying, "I've been there. I've been through it too. You're not alone. This is what we share. Let's grasp onto this and change these situations that cause us pain." And that's using song, that's using circle, that's using ritual, that's um, you know using smoke, sage, that's
Uh-huh.
using sacred instruments. I mean, sacred chants. Uh, all these things, you're trying to heal while you're communicating with folks who've gone through some of the same pain you have. Um, so I do think that the healing elements that I bring to the work are important.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that
That's what I
is one
was
of the
about
really
the healing
important
element.
things about what theater has the power to do is have people kind of
Mhm.
see themselves reflected in what's happening and also feel like they're not so alone in whatever their joy, their grief, their fear, whatever. That's I think one of the most powerful things about theater. Um, I
Mhm.
I think when people you're like really connected to San Francisco and the Bay Area. Like I think probably when people think about poetry and they think about the Bay, they probably think about you. But how has living and working in the Bay Area kind of shaped your artistry? Like the people, the landscapes, the contradictions. And I'm also going to talk about the politics too. We're going to dive a little more deeper into that. But just tell me about how being in the Bay has affected your artistry.
Um, so I was just at a gathering last Friday, um, with a bunch of San Francisco artists, and we were all there to acknowledge that we're in a crisis right now, and I know that the world is in a crisis right now, but we were really talking about how the arts ecosystem is really damaged in San Francisco right now. Not just funding with, but when you pull funding from the arts, then the next thing that goes is structure. And so when venues are closing down, and you realize that, cultural centers, theaters, galleries, that these actually sustain more than just the artist. That these venues are all connected to each other, even if they're in different neighborhoods, or
They
different
also
different
sustain the
aesthetics.
economy a lot of ways too. People often forget that.
Yes, right. Absolutely. And when we're like, okay, we've all got about 40 to 50% less money this year. Um, and there are places closing left and right on us. And here we are all acknowledging, looking at each other like this sucks, like where where are we gonna find ways to sustain ourselves for the next few years? Who's responsible for this, and who should be supporting us? And when I think about that, I feel so grateful that I'm one, included in those conversations, but two, that like I look around and see my peers who I've been working with, Robert Moses for 30 years, people who have been coming up with me, right? And I see that we're still here, we're still creating, um, and we've weathered so many different storms, political crises, economic crisis, gentrification, AI, tech, all these things, that have evictions, all the things that really. I would say that my generation of artists in San Francisco and the Bay
Yes,
Area, our biggest
100%.
issue is
I agree.
gentrification. That pretty much our whole generation of folks in the cities have felt, the gigantic cultural shift around gentrification that leads to economic and racial shifts. And those things have hurt us, but they've also like given us a lot of purpose. Um, and in the Bay, you've got so much political legacy already. Like people who I can point to people, like the mime troupe. Looking back at the mime troupe who came up in the '60s, making street theater about social issues. They didn't need a stage in a theater.
Yeah.
They just made their stuff on the street, right? Because that's where they were going to hit people in the face with what's going on. And they use clowning and commedia dell'arte and all kinds of ways to get attention. And that's really what we do here. It's like we are a community of people whose purpose is to create art, and yet we do it to make the most noise. We're
Definitely
not a
not.
quiet community here, and I know that has been both beneficial and detrimental. If you are an artist who is an introvert, this is probably not the best spot for you, right? Because it's hard to get seen in a community like this, because most of the folks are here because they made a name for themselves by shouting or being big or being loud. Um, and that's part of kind of like what I do. I end up being in a lot of um, community circles where I'm the loudest dude there, right? And and sometimes it's not. These aren't art contexts. These might be like legal situations or health contexts, or
Mm.
you're talking to 6
Oh, that's great.
doctors from the Alameda County Health
I love
Department
that kind
about
of cross sector work
about
when
why
that doesn't happen all the time either. So that's great.
that also happens in the Bay, right? And I have made a lot of inroads about trying to show other sectors like the health sector, like the housing sector, or
Mhm.
the, because housing is gigantic in SF also. Huh. Sorry, I'm not trying to like
No, but
reduce
that's
our
it's
lives
real.
to
That's like a
issues,
big part of what's
but
happening in
like,
that area.
yeah, and those things, I have seen how as artists in the Bay, we take these types of
Mhm.
issues and crisis, and we make art out of them that don't necessarily solve the solutions, but say that these things um, can move us to change them, right? So I've been a part of those movements to change, whether it's to create fair housing, whether it's to increase health access, or whether it's to reduce violence, um, with my art. And I think that's what we do in the Bay. Um, we try to affect the structural elements in little ways, because folks look at each other as, what are you going to do to make this world better? um, how are you going to do it, right? And that's kind of like what you're expected to do in the Bay, Lily. Honestly, you're expected to
Mhm.
take on the social issues, and
Yeah.
that is a huge responsibility,
Mhm.
because not all artists want to do
Right.
that. Some want to paint pretty colors, and want to look at landscapes, and they want to draw figures and show the beauty of the small details, or be abstract. um, but here in the Bay Area, that's not the
Mhm.
popular art, and so that's what we do here. That's the Bay. It is engaging directly with social issues, making your art about um, purpose. With an idea of how can people benefit from what you're doing, and that's why we don't
Mm.
get a lot of famous artists. I'll be honest with you. Um, if I was talking to to actually this woman who runs the community music center here. She's like, we don't do great with celebrity artists in San Francisco. We don't make celebrities. Um, we don't have Hollywood. We don't have Broadway. In fact, no
Oh,
one really
really?
is a celebrity here until they leave. I mean, we point to a few examples, Zendaya, or other artists. They start in
Yeah.
in our community art programs and eclipse them, and move on. And that's part of it. And I also feel like they are educated what type of arts culture is in the Bay, and take that with them to
Mhm.
their next space. You know, we
Yes.
are very different from Los Angeles's art scene. We don't have the measurement of, are you going to be Hollywood or not, when you're performing and creating. And you're not measured into what kind of inroads, who in Hollywood. um we are very different. We have these micro communities just in San Francisco itself, that we have micro weather. We have micro community. My
Mm.
neighborhood
Wow.
has its own art scene.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? um
Right.
the Mission has its own arts legacy. We can say Carlos Santana. We can say Latin rock started on Mission Street. We can say the mural movement. We can say the rebirth of Frida
Yeah.
Kahlo. Those
Mhm.
things
It's
started
true.
in the Mission. So we lean into that, right? And say, like, this is our legacy. That was something that we didn't have in San Diego. Just FYI, like when I was growing up in Chula Vista and San Diego, there wasn't an artistic legacy that was apparent. But when I stepped off BART at 24th and Mission,
Mhm.
you don't escape it. It's in your face. Um, the first thing you see is a massive mural of the Santana family. The second thing you see is a mural of brown people lifting up the tracks of the BART train that went right through their neighborhood. The third thing you'll see is somebody playing a guitar, and somebody shouting at them on a bullhorn about, it's like,
Uh-huh.
this is what you inherit. Um, and that is what you have to choose. Am I going to be part of that? Right? Do I want to continue that type of social justice oriented work? Um, and I chose to embrace it. I didn't know that's what I was gonna do when I came here in '95, but I realized that that
Mhm.
is what you're
Mm.
called to do
Yeah, I love
here.
that because I also love
Yeah.
theater that promotes social justice, because I think that's how theater can really make one of the biggest impacts on society. You've said that my plays seek to present possible solutions to social problems that impact my community in order to humanize the problem and conceive alternative possibilities within the context of an individual life story. And as we've been talking about, like a lot of your work focuses on immigration, immigrants, the immigrant experience, and also political violence, which in our current situation, our current climate is rampant. So, how is what's happening right now with ICE and Minneapolis and everywhere? How is that kind of affecting your art or your mind currently, or any future art that you think you might come out of it?
Man, it's fucking crippling, I'll be honest with you. It's when you realize that the enemy is humongous, uh, and you start to realize that spending the time writing, sometimes feels like a superfluous use of your time. Um, you doubt. You doubt a lot. You think, "My art isn't going to get people out of detention. My art is not going to keep ICE from detaining somebody." You think these things, right? And this is the first instinct that I have. Is I start to worry. I have a lot of anxiety, I think, and then I work through it, right? Then I start to like that description you just said. I need to look at it on an individual level. Um, I can't get too caught up in the large superstructure, everything of it at first, because then I feel overwhelmed. Um, so often I will try to get granular. I'll look at one person's experience and try to feel like, how can I help? How can I intervene here? How can I be a uh, how can I be an instigator of change by interfacing with one element? So you know, maybe it's telling the story of one person who was detained. Maybe it's delivering messages between family members who have been arrested and detained. Um, Maybe it's writing a letter specifically to a lawyer to provide some sort of mitigating evidence. I've done this stuff, Lily. Like I've been
Mhm.
involved in the non-arts so much. Um, you know, almost at every level of the justice system, from death row to deportation hearings to victims of police murder. I've been involved in all of it. Um, I can't believe I just said that. Uh, and you can't get overwhelmed. Um, you gotta believe that your individual support can change one person's life. Um,
Yeah.
because
Yeah, you get
otherwise you won't do
paralyzed.
anything, and you get paralyzed. And so I figure out how do I how do I plug in? Where can I fit to make the smallest bit of change? What person can I help? Um, is it me performing? Is it me writing? Is it me driving? You know, is it me testifying? Is it me uh, walking somebody somewhere? I mean, this is my life. This is what I do. I'd say the majority. I mean, I don't know if you saw what I said on the Doris Duke Instagram about what happens when artists go to work. Most of my artwork does not happen in creativity. It happens preparing or working to then create. And sometimes that's an economic issue, and other times that's just like a purpose thing. an obligation thing, an ideology thing, where I'm pursuing what I think should be, the best condition of things. I'm trying to make that happen in my life. I don't think uh, writers should sacrifice experience for writing. Let me say that again. I don't think that art is more important than life. Um, I think life is the reason we're here. I think we're supposed to make this place better. That means helping folks. So sometimes you're helping somebody doesn't include you writing, painting, drawing, creating a song. Sometimes it's actually you getting in the street, you knocking on a door, you picking somebody up. And I'm not saying that people don't do that. I'm just saying that that's the way I see my purpose as an artist. Um, so in order for me not to get overwhelmed with what's going on right now, I have to shift my mindset from how will my poems change the world, or how will my plays free prisoners, to who can I help today? And that's what I've been doing. In fact, I run a program right now whose job is to help people who've suffered
Wow,
immigration
that's good.
trauma get to
Wow,
a
that's
therapist.
much needed.
You know what I mean? And that's what I've been doing. Like I set up this whole mental health program for immigrants to find better access to mental health services so they can deal
Yeah,
with
the ones I
immigration
really
trauma,
also
fear,
worry about are the
anxiety.
children,
Um,
especially about how this is all going to reverberate through their
Kids
lifetimes. And I can't even imagine the amount of trauma that they're being put through.
won't even know until they're older. And that's a whole generation of children. But I will say this, Lily, I did grow up on the border, so I've been exposed to the Border Patrol since I was born. Um, Seeing them terrorize our communities when I was in elementary school, knowing children that got deported, who came back, and then got deported again. Um, it's it's unfortunate that this is the condition. I just I know people are now experiencing ICE on a level that they've never seen before. But I've seen them take people from their cars and their homes even before there was something called ICE. And I've jumped in front of those folks before. Um, I've interrupted arrests of immigrants. I've been a part of that since in 1994 when we were protesting Proposition 187. And so this isn't really new. It's just it is very much being put in front of everybody's face. At a level that we haven't seen before. But that budget that ICE has is massive. That's an army's budget. What is it? I don't know how many billion. 75 billion. That what? You're going to pay ICE more than school teachers. It's ridiculous. But this is what we're up against. So this is the struggle that we have right now, to figure out how we can make an impact and change it little by little. Because right now we don't have a specific strategy to take it all down, and we're not getting any help in the government. So it's going to have to be organized community to community.
Wow, I love that you're really using your art and just even yourself, your day to day, to really make an impact, especially at this time. It's really inspiring. And I think a lot of people are going to draw something from that, because a lot of people right now are overwhelmed and paralyzed. But like you said, if you can just do something for one person or one thing, that makes a whole, a larger difference than even you can think of. Thank you. That was a little heavy, so we're gonna transition to the light stuff. We're gonna wrap up with these questionnaires. First, I have the Maria Bamford questionnaire. That's a couple questions from that. She's a comedian and actress who developed this questionnaire that they often use in New York Magazine, and they give it to different notable people. Maria, she had a show on Netflix called Lady Dynamite. You might have heard of that. So we'll try her questionnaire first. Then we're going to go to the little more she Bernard Pivot questionnaire from that they used to use inside the actor's studio. It's a little more shishi. I don't
The
know.
shishi?
Bernard, when I say Bernard Pivot, especially in the James Lipton voice, it sounds more shishi anyway. All right. This was a
All right,
little,
let's do
little
it.
dark too. I think I did say we were gonna go light, but let's just start with this. This one is, what do you think is your most likely cause of death?
I'll say
Interesting.
fire.
What's your zodiac sign? Okay,
My zodiac, I am a
interesting.
Taurus.
I'm not sure what that all means, but I'm going to research it later. Next question is, if you could move, I think I might know the answer to this, but if you're going to move anywhere outside of the U.S. or to another U.S. city, where could you see yourself living?
Oh gosh, I think about this one all the time. I think, first of all, I love New Mexico, so I would consider moving to somewhere
Yeah, same.
between Santa Fe and Albuquerque. I think outside of that, I would move to the Caribbean.
Really? Oh, wow.
Any of the islands would be good for me.
There's not one that you prefer over another?
Any of them. Yep. I mean, I love them all. I've been to, 4.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've been to tiny and smaller ones, but I would love to live. I could live in Puerto Rico. I could live in Cuba, Dominican, Jamaica, and that's where I see myself.
Yeah,
if I was
Jamaica
ever to have heaven.
Mon. Last one on the Bamford, but what would your religion be like if you had to make up your own religion?
Let's see. If I had to make up my own religion, I think it might be like maybe we worship animals instead of gods in the form of humans. We would be very much more respectful of animals and live in harmony with animals and plants. I think maybe we'd find ways to really revere trees and plants and animals and respect our connection to them, like instead of just trying to take over their land, we respect and live in harmony with them and not try to turn everything into a parking lot or amusement park or more housing up in the wilderness.
All right, now moving on to the Pivot questionnaire. These are just a couple quick questions. You shouldn't really think about the answers too much, just kind of the first thing that comes to your mind. What is your favorite word?
Your favorite word?
Oh, that's a good one. Yes.
Propensity.
What is your favorite word?
Least favorite word? I would say cojo.
For those of us who don't speak the language, what does that mean?
It's like a vulgar way of describing selves.
Good to know. I'll use that next time.
COJO.
What turns you on?
Candle scent.
What turns you off?
Monotone voices.
Yeah, like the AI voices that they have now, they all sound the same and they're so ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
You could say AI monotone if you want.
What sound or noise do you love?
I love a
What
trumpet
sound or
by
noise
itself.
do you hate?
Car alarms.
What is your favorite curse word?
Well, it's Spanish also. I would say coño, or I would say pinga. Also a bad word.
Oh gosh. Oh, okay. I'm gonna Google Translate that later.
Like if I'm cursing because of I'm mad at something, I'll say it. Or if somebody cuts me off in traffic, or if I'm about to yell at you, I might say pinga.
I'm gonna use that now to know.
I don't know if we're supposed to put
I was like, I don't even know what it means, but I'm gonna use it. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I definitely would have liked to have been a therapist and study.
What profession would
study
you
mental
not
health,
like to
yes.
do?
Oh God. When was I most miserable? I think convenience store. Working at 7-Eleven was
I
the
bet
worst.
there's a lot of characters that come through there, but that keeps it interesting now.
Oh my god, it was horrible. Like those
Oh
commercials.
no. Oh
I
yeah.
always worked the night
Yeah.
shift, so
The
I
freaks
cut the
come out at
wolf from the
night.
wolf. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the freaks do. I was young. I was
Oh
very
wow.
young, but
Okay,
still,
last
I hated it.
question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
What do I want him to say? I would like him to say, "Go on inside and grab a plate." That's what I would like him to
Great.
say.
Love that. Yeah, it always comes back to food.
Please offer me
For
some
me
food.
too. All right, Paul, I think that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing a little bit about your art and your story. Is there anything that you have upcoming that you're working on that people should know about? What's next?
I don't have anything production wise that will
Yeah.
be ready by the time this comes out. I'm going to be on tour. I'm going to be going on a community college tour basically for the spring, where I'll be at like 6 different community colleges that I'll be performing at. So, between the work I'm doing here and getting out on the road, I think those are the biggest things I have between now and May. I will have a workshop production of this new project called Clothes on Fire in October. And that's what I'm calling the
Oh, that
samba
sounds good.
musical.
All right, so we'll definitely stay tuned for that.
Yes.
And people can check out paulsflores.art to find out more about Paul and what he has upcoming and where you can catch him. Thanks again, Paul.
Thank you. This was super fun.
Definitely, you've always been cool, so I definitely knew it's a good way to start.
I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. Many thanks to Paul S. Flores for making the time to chat with me. And a very special thanks to my girl, Crystal Borrell, who helped produce and edit this episode. Come back next time to find out who's going to be in the limelight with Lil.